All right, everyone, get ready because today we're going to try and tackle a mystery that's been around for centuries.
The Loch Ness Monster.
A creature of myth and folklore.
That's right. And despite the lack of any real hard evidence, it just keeps capturing our imaginations.
I wasn't really sure what to expect going into this.
Hmm.
I've always been fascinated by Nessie, but I'm also pretty skeptical.
I understand. It's a story that really kind of walks that line between folklore and could this actually be real?
Exactly. So how do we even begin to try and figure this out? Where does the story even start?
Well, the first time we see anything about a monster in Loch Ness is way back in 565 AD.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a story called The Life of St. Columba, and it describes this encounter with a water beast in the River Ness.
565. That's so long ago. What happened in this encounter?
So according to the story, this creature attacked a swimmer, and St. Columba stepped in, and using the power of his faith, he repelled the beast.
Okay, well, that's a pretty dramatic start to this legend.
It's definitely a product of its time, but the fact that the story has stuck around for so long, really kind of shows how fascinated people are by the unknown.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if these early stories were their way of trying to explain the natural world, especially events that they couldn't really understand at the time.
Yeah, definitely myths and legends often serve as that bridge between, what we understand and then those mysteries that are all around us.
Okay, so let's fast forward a bit. The most famous evidence that we have for Nessie is what's called the surgeon's photograph. I remember this photograph everywhere growing up, and for so long, people were convinced that this was real.
Yeah, it was a photograph that came out in 1934, and it was taken by a surgeon from London who wanted to stay anonymous, which made the whole thing even more mysterious.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and the photo, it seemed to show Nessie's long neck and head coming out of the water.
I bet that caused a lot of excitement in the media.
Oh, it did. For decades, people considered it the best proof that the monster was real. But then in the 1990s, researchers started to take another look at the photograph.
And what did they find? What's the real story behind this picture?
Well, they used some pretty advanced techniques, and they found that some things didn't quite add up. The ripples in the water didn't really match what you would expect from something that big. And finally, in 1999, they figured out that it was a fake.
It was a fake. No way. What was it actually a picture of?
It turned out that the monster was actually a toy submarine that had been made to look like it had a head and neck. The whole thing was planned to get back at the Daily Mail newspaper.
Wow. So a toy submarine and a personal vendetta sparked decades of speculation.
Yeah, it shows how much we all love a good story, even if it turns out to not be true.
Exactly.
But it also shows how important it is to think critically and, look at things from a scientific point of view. We need to question what we see, especially when something seems too good to be true.
Okay, so that famous picture is debunked. But what about all the other times people have said they've seen Nessie over the years? Is there anything to those, or are we talking about more illusions and people just misunderstanding what they're seeing?
Well, to really get to the bottom of those sightings, we have to consider the environment of Loch Ness itself and also some of the things that live there.
Okay, so let's get into the science of Loch Ness. What could be behind all these supposed sightings?
One really interesting thing is how many European eels live in Loch Ness. These eels can get really big.
Wait, are you saying that Nessie could just be a giant eel?
Well, there was a DNA study in 2018 and 2019 that showed tons of eel DNA in the Loch Ness water. And it could be that some people who thought they saw Nessie, especially if they described seeing a snake-like shape, maybe they just saw one of these big eels.
That is interesting. But eels don't really fit that classic long neck and humps description, do they? I feel like there's got to be more to it.
You're right. Loch Ness is unique because it's really long and straight, and that makes it what we call susceptible to seiches.
Say what?
Seiches, yeah, it's basically when you get standing waves that are caused by changes in the wind or the air pressure. They can make weird ripples on the water.
So you're saying these seiches could be mistaken for a big creature moving in the water?
Exactly. And when you think about the other things that could be happening, like logs floating in the water boat wakes, or even just the way the air can make things look different, it's easy to see how someone might think they're seeing something that isn't really there.
Wow. It's amazing how all these natural things combined with how our brains work can lead to such crazy ideas.
Our brains are always looking for patterns and trying to make sense of everything around us. Sometimes that means we see things that aren't actually there, especially if we're already hoping to see something amazing.
Okay, so we've got eels that might be mistaken for Nessie, and we've got these environmental illusions. But didn't you mention something about hoaxes before?
Oh, yeah. There have definitely been some people who tried to make people believe in Nessie on purpose. You know the story about the monster's corpse that washed up on shore?
I don't, actually.
Well, it caused a lot of excitement until someone figured out it was just a shaved and messed up elephant seal. Someone put it there as a joke.
Oh, come on. People actually believe that.
It happens. And then there was that TV documentary in 2004 that used a fake plesiosaur model to try and make people think they were seeing Nessie.
It's incredible how much effort some people will go to just to keep the legend alive.
Yeah.
I guess it shows how much we want to believe in something extraordinary, even when we know it's not real.
Yeah, it's a testament to how powerful a good story can be and how much we need a sense of wonder and mystery in our lives.
Okay, so we've debunked that famous photo. We've talked about eels and illusions and even hoaxes. But what about the idea that Nessie is a plesiosaur? You know, one of those prehistoric marine reptiles. I mean, there's no way Loch Ness has a living dinosaur in it, right?
Well, the plesiosaur theory is popular probably because it's such a cool image to think about. But if you look at it from a scientific point of view, there are some big problems with that idea.
Okay, like what?
Well, first of all, Loch Ness was formed after the last ice age, which means it's only about 10,000 years old. Plesiosaurs died out millions of years ago.
Oh, yeah, that seems like a pretty big problem.
Yeah, it is. And even if a plesiosaur did somehow live that long, Loch Ness wouldn't be a great place for it to live. They had to come up to the surface to breathe air, so we'd see them a lot more often than people claim to see Nessie.
So no plesiosaurs hiding out in the loch.
Probably not. And on top of that, the way we picture Nessie with its head and neck sticking out of the water, plesiosaurs couldn't even do that. Their necks weren't flexible enough.
That makes sense. So if Nessie isn't a giant eel or an optical illusion or a prehistoric reptile, then what is it? What's your best guess?
Well, the way I see it is probably a combination of things. You've got the eels that people might be mistaking for Nessie, and then the way the environment can trick our eyes. And of course, people like to see patterns and make stories even more exciting than they really are.
So the mystery continues.
It seems like it. We may not have proof that there's a monster, but the legend is still so fascinating. It reminds us that there's still so much we don't know.
That's really thought-provoking. Thanks for breaking down the Nessie myth with us.
It's been my pleasure. It's always good to keep exploring and approach these mysteries with a mix of skepticism and curiosity.
Even though we've talked about some of the most likely reasons behind Nessie sightings, I can't help but be interested in how many searches and investigations there have been over the years. People seem really determined to find out the truth.
Oh, yeah. The search for Nessie has been going on for decades, and people have used all sorts of methods and technologies all to try and prove whether this creature exists or not.
So tell me about some of the most famous efforts to find Nessie. How far back did these searches go?
Well, one of the first organized searches was back in 1934. It was funded by this wealthy guy named Edward Mountain. He put together a team of 20 men stationed all around the loch with binoculars and cameras.
Wow, 20 men just to watch for Nessie. That's pretty amazing. Did they find anything?
They took a bunch of photographs, but none of them were really clear enough to prove anything. They even got some film footage, but unfortunately it's been lost.
Oh, man. That's too bad. It'd be so cool to see that footage now. What about more recent attempts? I bet technology has made a big difference in how people search for Nessie these days.
Definitely. In the 1960s, a group started something called the Loch Ness Phenomena Investigation Bureau. Just imagine a whole bureau dedicated to solving the mysteries of Loch Ness.
Wow, they were serious about this. What kind of stuff did they do?
They had teams of volunteers watching the loch. They set up cameras with super strong lenses, and they even tried using sonar.
Sonar, like what they used to find submarines.
Exactly. They were hoping to pick up on anything unusual moving around deep in the loch. And in 1968, they actually recorded some really interesting sonar readings. It looked like there were multiple things moving down there way faster than any normal fish.
That's kind of creepy. So did they ever figure out what those things were?
Sadly, no. They thought maybe it could have been seals that had gotten into the loch, but they could never confirm it.
So the sonar search didn't really give us any answers, huh?
You could say it made the mystery even bigger. It's worth mentioning that there was this researcher named Robert Rhymes who led a bunch of sonar expeditions in the 70s and even into the 2000s.
Okay.
He claimed he got images of what looked like a giant flipper.
A flipper. Whoa, that sounds pretty promising. Were the images ever verified?
Well, people have been arguing about those images for years. Some think they show proof of some unknown creature, while others say they're just rocks or air bubbles that got misinterpreted by the sonar.
So the mystery continues. Were there any other big searches worth talking about?
In 1987, there was this huge effort called Operation Deep Scan. It involved 24 boats all equipped with high-tech sonar. They basically created this super detailed acoustic map of the whole loch.
Did they find Nessie on their map?
Well, they did find a large object that they couldn't identify, but no one knows for sure what it was. It could have been a natural part of the loch bed or even a big pile of junk. Sadly, Operation Deep Scan, like every search before it, didn't give us any solid evidence of a monster.
It's crazy to think that even with all this searching and advanced technology, we still don't know for sure about Nessie.
It is, but it shows how much humans love to explore and search for knowledge, even when things are uncertain.
I have to ask, with so many searches coming up empty, why do people keep looking for Nessie? What keeps them going?
Well, I think there's something really captivating about the idea of a hidden creature, a secret world under the water. Humans are just naturally drawn to the unknown, to mysteries that we can't fully explain.
We all want a little bit of magic and wonder in our life, something that makes us use our imaginations and reminds us that there are still surprises out there.
Exactly. And the Loch Ness Monster, with how elusive it is and how long its legend has been around, really captures that sense of wonder and possibility.
Hmm.
It reminds us that there are still mysteries out there waiting to be discovered, stories yet to be told.
Okay, so we've covered the more conventional searches, but I'm sure there have been some less conventional and maybe even crazy attempts to find Nessie. Can you tell me about some of the more creative or maybe even strange methods people have tried?
Oh, definitely. People have gotten really creative when it comes to hunting for Nessie. One researcher even suggested using trained dolphins to help find the monster.
Dolphins? Seriously?
Yeah, the idea was that dolphins have really advanced sonar and could navigate those murky depths of Loch Ness better than anything else, so they'd be able to find any hidden creatures.
It sounds like a long shot, but I can see the logic. Did they ever actually try it?
I don't think the dolphin plan ever went beyond just an idea. It would have been super complicated to actually pull it off.
So what are some other out there ideas that people have had?
Well, at one point, someone wanted to use a giant net to try and catch Nessie.
A net. How big are we talking?
Huge. It would have been miles long, stretching all the way across the loch.
Wow, they were really serious about catching this thing. But wouldn't a net that big cause problems for the environment?
Yeah, for sure. That's one of the reasons why the idea never happened. The potential damage to the loch's ecosystem stopped them before they could even start.
Makes sense. So any other unusual approaches?
There was one researcher who thought he could lure Nessie out using a special sonic device.
What?
Yeah, he thought he could make sounds that would attract the creature.
That's some outside-the-box thinking. Did he ever test out his sonic siren song?
He did, and he even said he recorded some weird underwater sounds that he thought were Nessie communicating.
Wow. Did anyone else hear these sounds?
Sadly, no one else could confirm if the recordings were real, and the sonic lure didn't lead to any confirmed Nessie sightings.
It seems like even the most creative ideas haven't been able to solve the mystery of the Loch Ness Monster. I guess that's what keeps people coming back for more.
Definitely. It's a good reminder that even though we have all this technology and scientific knowledge, there's still room for mystery and the unknown in the world.
And even if we never figure out the Nessie puzzle, the journey of trying to figure it out is valuable in itself, wouldn't you say?
Totally. It shows how curious we are as humans and how much we want to explore the world around us and push the limits of what we know.
Well said. This has been an incredible look into the history of searching for Nessie. I'd love to hear what you think about the bigger impact this legend has had on our culture. What does the Loch Ness Monster tell us about ourselves and our relationship with the unknown?
That's a great question. I think the Loch Ness Monster and other myths give us a peek into how humans think. We're fascinated by things we can't explain, and we always want to believe in something beyond the ordinary.
Perfect. We'll dig into that more in part 3 of our exploration of the Loch Ness Monster. And we've explored a lot when it comes to Nessie, all the scientific stuff, the countless searches, and even the really out there attempts to find it. But I feel like there's something more to this story.
Yeah, I think you're right. The Loch Ness Monster isn't just about whether or not it's real. It's become this cultural icon, a symbol that speaks to our imagination and that fascination with the unknown.
It's so true. Even after everything we've talked about, there's still a part of me that hopes there's some kind of magic hiding in those waters.
A lot of people feel that way. These myths, these stories about hidden creatures, they tap into something really deep within us. They connect us to that feeling of wonder and awe that we've always had throughout history.
So do you think these myths have a purpose beyond just being entertaining?
Absolutely. Myths and legends help us understand the mysteries of the world, especially the things we can't immediately grasp. They can give us explanations for natural things, teach us moral lessons, and connect us to our cultural roots.
I see what you mean. So the early stories about Nessie, like the one with St. Columbo, were probably a way for people to make sense of a world they didn't fully understand.
Exactly. And as we learned more about the natural world, these stories changed too. The Loch Ness Monster went from a scary beast to something that seemed more scientifically possible, like a plesiosaur. It's pretty amazing how these myths adapt and stay with us, even as science gives us new explanations.
It's like we're always trying to balance our desire to believe in something amazing with what we're learning about the world through science.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. These myths show a deeper need in us, a longing for mystery, and the possibility that there are amazing things out there that we haven't discovered yet.
So maybe the fun of the mystery is actually more important than finding the answer. Would the Loch Ness Monster be as exciting if we knew for sure what it was? Or would the magic disappear?
That's a really interesting question. Maybe it's the searching the journey itself that keeps these legends going. It's the fact that we don't know that really draws us in.
So the Loch Ness Monster reminds us that it's okay to enjoy a little mystery and wonder.
For sure. It encourages us to keep exploring, to keep asking questions, and to never completely lose that childlike curiosity about the unexplained.
This has been such an amazing journey exploring the Loch Ness Monster. We've talked about ancient myths, modern science, all the different searches, and even the psychology behind why we're so drawn to this creature.
We've seen how the legend has changed over time, how it reflects our growing scientific knowledge, but also how much we still want to believe in something extraordinary.
So what's the main takeaway for our listeners?
Yeah.
What should they remember as they think about the mystery of Nessie?
I would say be skeptical, but never lose that curiosity and sense of wonder. Keep searching, keep asking questions, and always be open to the idea that there's still so much we don't know about the world.
Well said. That's a great way to wrap things up. Well, everyone, that's it for our exploration of the Loch Ness Monster. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, stay curious.